Hey everyone, John with Your Spirituality. Thank you for joining me today. On this channel, I help people beat depression through spirituality and remember their authentic self at a soul level. Today, I want to share with you 7 spiritual beliefs that help me beat depression and honestly, to this day even, still help me keep it at bay when things aren't going quite how I want or those dark thoughts start, kind of coming back in. Before we dive too far into this, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on what it was exactly that took me to such a dark place and honestly had me planning an exit out of life. It's one thing to hear, somebody beat depression, but when you don't really know exactly what took them to that depressed state and all the thoughts that were swimming around in their head, it's easy to kind of, I don't want to say downplay it, but sometimes it doesn't have as much impact. So to kind of help you guys see just what I crawled out from, and by no means am I trying to make it a competition and be like, oh, I had the worst life in the world, because I didn't. I definitely had good things too. But I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with y'all and share some of the stuff that just kind of almost did me in. All right, so I've had my ups and downs with depression for most of my life. Some of the general stuff, I'm a big guy. I was big all my life. Was a lot larger even at some point in like middle school, and got bullied for that a lot. So a lot of the typical stuff of school bullies and stuff like that. But I was also left out a lot from family events. Like family would go out to like the movies and stuff, and I lived really close to most of my family, like 2 blocks away. And yet, for some reason, they always, one way or another, had an excuse for why I wasn't really invited. Oh, they just forgot or whatever. And that kind of played into this feeling that maybe they just didn't want me around. And at one point, one of my uncles actually flat out told me that that was the case, that they just, for whatever reason, didn't really like me. Didn't give a reason, just life was better without me. And hearing that at like 13, it kind of hits hard. Fast forward, when my dad passed away in 2010, there was some real toxic stuff said, up to and including telling me to my face that given the chance that they would trade my life for dad's in a heartbeat. Like they wished that I had died instead, because me being gay to them made me basically have no value as a person. They saw me as this thing that was just going to go to hell, and they saw no purpose to me being around anymore. Having someone that's supposed to, be in your corner, blood relative, whatever, tell you to your face they wished you were dead, and you can tell they mean it, that honestly kind of breaks a person. That happened, like I said, in 2010, and honestly still to this day in 2021, that swims around in my head sometimes when I get kind of down in a dark place. That wasn't the only thing that broke me, though. In 2017, a very dear friend of mine, who was basically like my little brother, decided to commit suicide himself. And when he committed suicide, I expected somebody to be there for me, and they weren't. And they weren't just not there for me, they actively made it worse. I was in Texas at the time, and the funeral was going to be in Ohio, where I was from, where my friend grew up. And I wasn't used to at the time doing things on my own. I hadn't really gone anywhere or done like any kind of solo trip. Did not want to do a solo trip for the funeral of what was more or less my little brother, but I ended up having to. So I drove near Thanksgiving from Texas to Ohio by myself, dealing with all the, trauma of losing this person. And the night of the funeral, after I got back to the hotel room, I started like falling apart. And I went to call this person, and they didn't answer. I tried calling again, they didn't answer. I did call a few excessive times, but it was somebody that I honestly thought I could trust, that was going to be there for me, somebody that was very close. And when I finally got through on like call at 8 or 9, I was very distraught. You could tell it from my voice. And the answer wasn't, hey, what, are you okay? They knew what was going on. It was just, what do you want? You're being kind of annoying. When I started to say I needed a dog, it was, well, you're kind of ruining my night. I'm out at Wildlands, I'm having a good night, and I don't want to deal with this right now. Hung up in my ear and just turned off the phone. I don't know how to explain to you how alone I felt. Like the one person that I would have gone to at that point had just opted out of life. And I was like, the thoughts that went through my mind that night of how people were going to find me in that hotel room, because I didn't know how I was going to get through it. Like, I was completely alone, had no one to turn to. It was just, sorry, I'm getting emotional talking about it again. It was kind of rough, to say the least. But this plays into one of the beliefs later, but I'll give you kind of an idea. There was somebody that was there for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but a friend of mine that played World of Warcraft, we had known each other for several years, since I think 2007 was when we met on the game. He would drive through, he didn't live near Ohio at all, but he would drive through sometimes to Iowa to visit his family. And I got this text like 2 hours after the whole phone call incident that left me like devastated of, man, every time I go through Dayton, I think of you. And I'm just like, are you going through Dayton right now? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, hold the damn car. Hold on, stop. And we ended up going out to eat, hanging out, talking, meeting for the first time in person. And I wasn't alone, you know? So I'm going to go ahead and give you one of the beliefs, but I'll talk about it more, is just the universe brings us whatever we need whenever we need it. And that was kind of my proof of that. I'll talk about this again in a little bit. But now you kind of get an idea of some of the stuff that I deal with that goes around in my head that just took me to a place that, honestly, a few of my friends were like, yeah, I wouldn't have come back from a couple of those, much less all of it combined. And these are just a few of the things. There's honestly a lot. I do want to preface this with the people that did these things. I honestly still have a relationship with them. I have boundaries now. But honestly, I thank them for it now, in a way, because it taught me how to be unconditionally loving, how to love people when I didn't feel loved back. And that's something that I'm honestly really proud of myself for, because not a lot of people can do that. So anyway, let's get into the 7 beliefs. The first belief is kind of 2 in 1, is that the universe always gives us exactly what we need when we need it. Sometimes not a single thing more. And everything that happens to us is actually happening for us, not to us. But that whole story I gave of going to my friend's funeral and having my friend Jeff come along out of nowhere, that's kind of proof of it. Like, that whole event, I needed that entire experience. The bad, the parts that broke me, and that seemingly divine interference that led me to having a friend there that night. I needed the whole breaking experience to show me just how strong I was. Because it's not that I wasn't strong, but I had no idea I had the strength to get through something like that. And believe me, going through it, I thought I was going to die, either by my own hands or by the stress of it, because it was tearing me apart. It was easily the most traumatic thing I've gone through, and to have that actively made worse by someone that I fully trusted and told me they loved me, that really about did me in. But I honestly thank them now, because I realized that I needed that whole situation. I needed all of it. It took me to the lowest of lows I've ever been at in my life. But out of that, it sent me searching spiritually and got me on my spiritual path. And being on that spiritual path led me to where I am now, where I slowly clawed my way back into a life that I am so glad I didn't give up. And now I'm sitting here making videos saying I actually feel so much better about everything that I believe I can help other people too, because I truly believe I can. I truly do believe that everything happens for us and not to us. Sometimes we hold on way too tightly to things that are no longer really serving our life or helping our soul grow. And when we're holding on too tightly, sometimes the only way to get us to let go is for a storm to come along that just kind of destroys our life and leaves us with no choice but to rebuild to what is actually meant for us. And even though it's hard to see it at the time, it honestly can end up so much more beautiful than you could ever imagine. But it's not really going to be built while you're still holding on to what was broken. And I'm not saying it's going to be fun. I've had it happen to me, and it is not fun. It feels like hell when you're going through it, and it kind of is. But looking back, I would go through everything I went through again to get to where I'm at now. And I'm pretty confident that anyone hearing this will be able to say the same thing when they start applying some of these steps in here. Because the universe honestly gave me the perfect storm of absolute chaos to break me, but just to that breaking point where I could come back from, to teach me to love myself, trust myself, and show how much value I actually give to the world. Because honestly, I was just beaten down to the point where I thought I was useless, but I didn't pay attention to all the things that I was doing for people at the same time, and just how many people didn't see that useless person that I saw, that some toxic people showed me I was, when I wasn't that at all. Which, this brings me to point number 2, and that's the belief that we have these things called soul contracts. A soul contract is kind of what it sounds like. Basically, before we incarnate into this life, I believe that our souls, the people that we incarnate here with, the other souls, we kind of have this meeting, so to say, of deciding what kind of role we're going to play in each other's life, to play out some kind of karmic pattern from a previous life. And I honestly believe that's what happened with some of the story that I gave a little bit ago. I believe there's some kind of karmic pattern being played out between me and my family members, me and the person that kind of let me down during my friend's suicide. And I realize it sounds a little esoteric, and it is. I kind of read about this idea in a Dolores Cannon book, and I think I heard her talk about it at one point too. And for some reason, it did kind of resonate with me. It makes it seem like there is some kind of point to what seems like complete coldness from people sometimes, especially people that we believe we mean something to. It even explains why we act the way we do sometimes to other people. It doesn't make it seem so meaningless, and that helps me a lot. I honestly do believe that the people that play like the biggest roles in our life, it's planned out that at somewhere along our journey we're going to meet them. I'm not saying I don't believe in free will. I do. Like, once we're in this body, we can choose to kind of go off script, so to say. I only feel like our higher self or spirit guides or whatever you want to call it, God, whoever, only steps in if we are getting so far off track that we're about to be at the point where we can only come back with like a big, big reset where we have to reincarnate again. Otherwise, I feel like it's just kind of left up to us to play the game of life and see how it turns out. The third belief is that life is a reflection of our beliefs, and our beliefs actually create the reality we experience. I don't believe that life is random. I believe it's a series of patterns that are playing out in front of us based off of our thoughts, beliefs, and our vibrational resonance, as well as karmic patterns that need to be played out as well. At the end of the video and in the description down below, I'm going to give a link to a website from Aaron Doughty, another awesome YouTuber on here with some great spiritual content on how to check what your vibration is and how to raise it. If you sign up on there, he'll give you a free meditation to also help raise your vibration. It's pretty cool. It's something that helped me out a lot. So stick around for that. I will admit I was very skeptical of the idea that life plays out patterns like that and that it's not so random. It seemed kind of esoteric to me, like something out of Harry Potter or something. But when I started looking at like all the experiences I had and how similar they could be to each other, it started to make more sense. Like, I kept interacting with the same types of people even though it was different faces. And I'm sure if you look back and look at just the different friend circles you've had, different experiences you've had with different jobs, you can probably see where there's a lot of the same theme going on. It may have like subtle differences or even some big differences, but the general emotional like triggers that are involved are probably very similar, because I've noticed this for honestly every person I've ever met. When they start telling me, their life story and whatnot, it's like, so you dealt with this and then you dealt with this, but it's basically the same thing as this. It's kind of crazy how it works, but I think it is designed that way to help us wake up to this truth that our beliefs create our reality and that we are playing out patterns until we learn them. And in all the different relationships that I ended up in, friendship and otherwise, I carried around this wounded feeling that I wasn't deserving of love, that people just kind of tolerated me, which was brought on by stuff that I experienced as a kid. And honestly, once I finally started to address it, like last year, and believe that and see that I had that belief that was kind of creating that reflection to me, that's when it started to change. Think of it kind of like those Christmas movies where somebody wishes for it to be Christmas like all year long, and then they get that wish and they keep going through the same day, but they realize the only way to get out of having Christmas 24/7 is to do it different. Like, they have to make an actual change in what they're doing to break the cycle of it. That's kind of the same exact thing with this. And honestly, kind of like school, you will be tested. Like, you will keep seeing the same pattern play out until you respond to it differently. Like, you're not going to see an external reflection of it changing until you actually have an internal reflection of it changing. When you start to respond to it differently and you don't let it be so emotional, but you recognize the trigger, you recognize the pattern, and you actually feel like you overcome it in a way of confidence with yourself, that's when it's going to start to change. I'm not going to say that it won't maybe creep back up later in your life to see if you really learned the lesson, because life tends to do that somehow for you. But like, for me, this is last year, like I said, I started to address it, and now in Florida, like, I'm actually having like friend relationships at this point that are showing me that I am actually unconditionally loved by these people. It's not something that is going to change based off of, anything that I do. Rather than before, where I felt like I had to earn somebody's love by doing all this extra stuff. It's just like, all I have to do is be me. And that's completely enough at this point, which that never seemed to be enough before. Maybe it was, and I just didn't see it. But honestly, that's not how it kind of worked out for me before. I had to do all kinds of stuff to get people to actually seemingly want to interact with me. And I'm learning that is not the case any longer. So start recognizing the patterns in your life, and you'll be able to break them too. The fourth belief is that spirit guides and signs from them are very real. And I absolutely believe this with every ounce of my being at this point. I have had so many times where I have had like number patterns come up to me. I've explained this in a couple other videos as well, where it just, the meaning of it, like I would see the numbers over and over and over. Then I would go look on Google for like the spiritual meaning of them. And it would play into my life so unbelievably well, even to the point of me moving out here. Like, I saw, in a roundabout way, I won't go into the full detail of it, but I basically ended up seeing the number 1312 over and over and over. And when I looked it up, it was simultaneously at the same time that I was thinking about moving out here to Florida. I felt like it was the right thing to do. Like, I knew I wanted to be here, and it felt like the right time, but I was kind of scared to do it because it was when COVID numbers were kind of spiking and everything. So it didn't make a lot of logical sense to do it. But I had this like intuitive belief that it was the right thing to do. And when I saw the number over and over and over, when I read it, it was the message was something along the lines of, now is the right time to leave your safe little nest and start chasing the dreams that you want to build for yourself. Opportunities like this don't come up, a few times in a lifetime. The energy is right surrounding this. You will regret it if you don't do it. Not trying to scare you kind of thing, but just follow your heart. Your angels are encouraging you to be brave and just go for it. Take that leap of faith. And having that kind of hit me simultaneously while I'm considering this big move, I don't know how on earth that happens without some kind of divine interference, Like, that doesn't seem, it seems more likely that something was there than something wasn't there, and I just happened to coincidentally stumble upon that information. I'm going to say your experiences with this are going to be unique, and sometimes you are going to miss signs. Sometimes you're going to think there's a sign, and you're going to misinterpret it. That's just part of the journey with it. And yep, your friends are going to think you're insane. If they're not into this stuff, I promise you, you're going to get looked at like you're losing your damn mind. I promise you, I've not lost my mind. You're not losing your mind either. You're just waking up to stuff that is something that they're not ready to comprehend or even consider. Something that Aaron likes to say, and that I've heard from a lot of other people, is you can only perceive what you are the vibration of. If you're starting to wake up to this stuff and be interested in it, it's because you're becoming a vibrational match for this kind of information, and you're ready for your spiritual journey. However, your friends may not be ready for it yet. They may not be in this lifetime. They may be, however. It might be up to you to plant the seeds. It's not up to you to bloom those seeds for them, though. Just realize this is your journey. You're the one that's going to experience it. Don't let people talk you out of it. You're going to probably do like I did and try to get like validation for somebody to say, oh yeah, that actually sounds like something, man, for you to try to believe it, because it is some crazy stuff and it makes you feel kind of wonky, almost living your life off of these signs that no one else sees. But when you start to follow them and your life starts to get real good, you're going to be like, no one's going to be able to take it away from me. The fifth thing is that I honestly believe depression is almost a symptom of our soul being out of alignment with its purpose and our spiritual path. When we do things that go directly against our natural set point or our spiritual path, it causes some guilt and shame and feelings of just unpleasantness. And I think that's kind of what leads to depression as well. It's not because these things are inherently bad, it's just they're not a vibrational match for what is inside of us, for the path that we're supposed to be walking. But yet, sometimes the ego kind of takes over and gets stuck with finding these pleasures in these things. And it's like your ego is basically torturing, I don't want to say torturing, but kind of torturing your soul in a sense. And your soul's sitting there inside of you screaming, change what you're doing, like fix this. We feel like shit doing this. Just, you gotta do something different. But your ego's sitting there be like, no, this is how I find happiness. And it kind of just creates this tug of war inside that creates this depression. This is why I think people have such a hard time with the idea of what people consider sinning. It's not that you're doing something that's pissing off some divine being. You're doing something that goes against your soul's nature. Think of it kind of like a Horcrux in Harry Potter. You know, you're causing like a tear or something like that in your soul. So think of your depression as almost in a sense a tool that your soul is using to try to redirect you to a better path. It's a little bit difficult of a tool to use because when you start getting depressed, you get exhausted and you start just doing whatever you can to make yourself feel better. Take it from me, when you start to actually align your soul with your path and your purpose, you're going to feel a lot better than anything else is going to make you feel. The sixth thing is that everything happens at the right time, even if it's not the timing that we think it needs to happen in. And I mean literally everything. There are a ton of examples in my life, and I'm sure if you look at your life where you can look back and realize things didn't happen in the time you wanted it to, but if you really look at how things played out, you can see where you weren't ready for it to play out the way you needed to, or it worked out better than you could have ever thought it would have. And right now is a great example in my own life. I love love. I love romance. But this is the first time I've been single in my adult life. And honestly, I realize that I still have a lot of soul growth to do before I become like the best version of me that lives in a relationship that thrives, where I'm good for it. I'm able to be a healthy me in that relationship, be in my own vibe, and bring something to the relationship instead of this wounded person that is still trying to have that side of him that feels like he's unlovable, be loved, when it's not ready to fully be loved. And I'm getting a lot of reflection in my life right now, showing me how to love that part of me and calm it down so it can learn to trust that somebody else loves me when I didn't think that people would. So try to believe that in your life. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I honestly do believe that everything happens at the right time. It just doesn't happen at the time that we wish was right. And then the seventh and final thing, and this one is a big one, is the belief that the universe supports us unconditionally. It is so unconditionally supportive that it will support us in believing that it doesn't support us if that's what we actually believe is happening. The universe truly does love us. It is just indifferent to what we experience. It will let us experience whatever we are seemingly wanting to experience. And it decides that based off of what we're putting our energy towards and what we're believing. To really utilize this, you have to really be honest with yourself about the beliefs that are going on inside of you. If you tell yourself you believe something, but you have that voice inside of you that is telling you, there's some doubt here, pay attention. You might be getting a reflection from the universe that you're halfway there. You kind of believe it, but you don't believe it. I've been noticing that a lot in my own life as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys got something from it. I know it's a bit on the esoteric side of things, but I honestly do believe everything in here that I'm talking about. This information and these beliefs have helped me kind of transform my life in a way that I never could have believed it would have a few years ago. Like, this information was kind of like pecking its way into my life, like 5 years ago, but I wasn't ready for it. It was basically just kind of like planting these seeds in my mind that eventually I got curious enough about. But when it first hit me, I wasn't ready for it. Honestly, if you've made it this far in this video, I think it's safe for me to say this kind of information is meant for you right now. Like, you are waking up to your spiritual side, and trust that it's going to get magical soon. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be a little awkward at times, but you're not alone. You've got a lot of people out there that are sharing their experience as well. If you don't fully resonate with me with it, there's going to be others you resonate with. There's a lot of people getting called into this right now to help people just like you who are waking up to their self. So don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. You're going to love it. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you all in the comments. If you guys have stories about any of these things on this list or questions or anything, hit me up. I will try to respond to every single one of them. So the website I was talking about to check your vibration is just called whatsmyvibration.com. It's by Aaron Doughty. It takes you through like a 1-minute quiz or so. If you're not quite sure how to answer the questions on it, all you have to do is just kind of go with which one pulls you the hardest. So don't think too much on it, just kind of follow your intuition with it, and it'll get you where you need to go to figure it out. One other thing I'm going to start doing is giving a little bit of homework to listen to a specific song at the end of each video. You don't have to do them, but if you feel called to, I suggest doing it. The songs will be, honestly, a wide variety of genres, because I'm all over the place with my music taste, but I'm going to try to pick songs that really play into the message of the video. Today's song is going to be Life is a Show by Cassie Steele. It'll be in the description down below, and it'll also be in the little cards at the end of the video as well. So anyway, if you felt a good connection with me and you'd like to stay caught up with my videos, I invite you now to hit that subscribe button and the bell button so you can actually see the videos when they come out. If not, just no sweat. Like, I know some people are going to resonate with other people. So, love y'all. Catch you guys soon.